What? No way. You told me she had double D's? Oh, shit. Hey, you already know who this guy is, so no need to introduce you. But I'm Mr. Shock. This is Total Shock Fiction. You've just entered the Shock Factory. Let's roll that intro. Hmm? Oh, there is no intro. I've just been informed there's no intro. So we're just gonna go ahead and go forward with the show. We like to keep things shocking here. So in today's episode, we're gonna shock you with the truth about the real first ever slasher movie. And it's not Psycho. But before I continue, I'm gonna have to change up my music selection because this right here, it's just not it. That right there was not gonna work. That was some royalty free jazz. And honestly, it was so out of my wheelhouse of my vibe, I just couldn't get with it. So we're gonna rock with this little beat here in the background because that was that was fucking up my whole vibe. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes I like to get a little hyphy in here, you know? Are you shocked yet? Come on, Ash. Ash, you gotta pop your collar like this. Come on. Okay. So, first off, I want to explain how I discovered the first real slasher movie and what it is. It all started with my new article. I was going to do an article on the Halloween franchise, so I felt like I was going to dive back in and rewatch some of the movies, right? So I'm looking at what they have on HBO Max, aka HBO Tax, and they have literally the worst three Halloween movies in the entire franchise other than the Blumhouse trilogy. They have Curse of Michael Myers, H2O, and Resurrection. All trash. Trash, dumpster fires. So I'm sifting through the franchise and I'm breaking it all down and I'm looking at what it is. And I've seen all these movies 100 times over. All these slasher movies, like I don't even rewatch them anymore because I've rewatched them and rewatched them. I've just seen them all. I know them damn near like the back of my hand. I mean, I don't know every specific after years and years of not watching them, but I know what each movie is, what my reaction to it was, whether it's good or bad. Like I know all that. So when we're talking about the Halloween franchise, you break it down to the original trilogy, the Thorn trilogy, the Myers duology, the Zombie duology, and the Blumhouse trilogy. I know that sounded complex, but it's not. The first trilogy is Halloween and Halloween 2, 1981. I think that's 1981. But let's double check it just to make sure our slasherology is right. I believe it's 81, same year as Evil Dead, same year Elvira came out with movie Macabre. So Halloween 2 was the sequel John Carpenter didn't really want to make. The studio wanted him to make it. That's when he got drunk one night, called up Deborah and was like, hey, um, Lori is Michael's sister. And that's when they ran with the whole Halloween 2 thing. As I've said, the only thing I like about Halloween 2 is the very opening where everyone's kind of panicking and hearing on the radio about how there's been a bunch of murders and Michael's just walking through backyards and it's in his POV and you're seeing him just walking around. Similar to the scene where he's walking through backyards in Halloween 2018 where it's Nick Castle again, which is my favorite scene from that movie. Well, a tie between that and the bathroom scene because I really do like the bathroom scene in that movie. So You have Halloween, Halloween 2, and then you have Season of the Witch, which has no Michael Myers. I think there's like an Easter egg of his mask in it, but he's not in it, which is where they fucked up. And they were like, we're gonna do something different with the franchise because they blew up Michael in Halloween 2. So then, to me, that's the original trilogy. Halloween through Season of the Witch. That's the first three movies. It's trilogy. Then you have the Thorn trilogy, where they rebooted Michael. Return of Michael Myers, Revenge of Michael Myers, Curse of Michael Myers. The first two of those, Halloween 4 and 5, Return of Michael Myers, and then the Revenge of Michael Myers, is Danielle Harris playing Jamie Lloyd, Michael Myers' niece, where he's chasing her around and she's Laurie's long lost daughter. Return of Michael Myers, Halloween 4 is one of the best in the franchise, I would say. Michael's masks, they look pretty janky in that movie. But I believe there's a really cool gas station sequence with Dr. Loomis where the gas station blows up in that one after he kills a bunch of people. That scene was cool. This is also where you're seeing, Michael driving cars. And you know what? Michael actually has always driven cars because I was thinking like, yeah, why is Michael always hopping in cars and whipping around driving cars? But he stole the nurse's car in the first movie, so Michael Myers can drive. He's been driving since the first movie, and he drives off instinct because he never got a license. He's been in Smith's Grove since he was 6. So I mean, unless Dr. Loomis was letting him drive around the parking lot, um, you know, which honestly that would be a really fucking cool scene in a Halloween movie if they showed a flashback to him at Smith Grove when he's like 12 or 13 or some shit, and like Dr. Loomis is letting him drive around the parking lot. Like that would be a really cool scene. Like that's what I think was cool about what they did with Rob Zombie, with what Rob Zombie did with Halloween lore, showing a young Michael, showing us how did he become this lunatic psychopath on the loose killing. I think a new Halloween, what would be cool would you don't necessarily have to go with the whole white trash redneck vibe of like or hillbilly vibe, whatever you want to call it, white trash vibe of Rob Zombie's Halloween. But I think even just doing like a 16, 17-year-old Michael with like the long hair again, kind of covering his face, very despondent, just sitting at a table, like, and it's like Loomis trying to talk to him, and he's just sitting there like this. Like, I really think we have bypassed and skipped over teen slashers. Hear me out. We've seen Michael and Jason in space. We've seen Michael Myers, do so much different things. We've seen the slashers go so many different directions. But we've never seen teen Jason. We've never seen teen Michael. I actually had a story, like a fan fiction, I guess you could call it, spec script, a storyline I was working on called Slasher High, and it was more so inspired by like Rob Zombie's Halloween lore, where it's like Laurie and Michael going to high school, and like Michael's just big as fuck and like doesn't say shit. His hair's in front of his face, and he's just like kind of hulking around. Jason was gonna be like bald and like getting picked on and shit like that. Like I think we've skipped over like doing something with the teen slashers, like seeing a teen Michael. That's where I would start Halloween. If I was doing a Halloween right now, I would literally start it with like a 17-year-old Michael Myers, long sleeve shirt, just sitting at a table like this, with the hair over his face, like dark hair instead of make him blonde, make him with the dark hair, sitting there like this. And like Loomis is trying to talk to him, he's just sitting there like, you know what I'm saying? I feel like we could do more with teen Michael. I think we could do more with teen Jason, like especially with teen Jason. I think a teenage Jason would be dope. I'm hoping they're gonna do some shit with that with Crystal Lake, because that was my idea to do Young Hot Pam Voorhees. But I'm getting sidetracked here. Anyway, the Thorn trilogy is 4, 5, and 6. So Curse of Michael Myers is Halloween 6. The 4 and 5, they had Danielle Harris when she was a kid playing Jamie Lloyd. Then with 6, they recast her. And as I discuss in my article on The Shadow of a Doubt, they had to recast Danielle Harris because this was the bastardization of the Halloween lore and franchise. So the authenticity that she brings to the character of Jamie Lloyd and to the franchise, both as Jamie Lloyd and as Andy Brackett, and most of her roles, any of her roles, Danielle Harris, her character and her portrayal and acting was authentic. Like she's a real actor who really brings like, depth to a character, or, realness or real personality to a character. And what they wanted to do with the franchise, it just wouldn't have worked. Like what that whole creepy uncle, you know what I'm saying, the baby of Myers storyline, like I don't see Daniel Harris getting behind that and like being part of that. And then the way that they kill off Jamie Lloyd, like her death was very gross. You know how he throws her on the farming equipment and hits the shit on and it turns on and you just hear like I didn't like that. It was very like disrespectful to the character, and then also the lore is just creepy. It's just weird. I don't know why Halloween their go to is like some weird family shit. That's like always their like go to when they trying to come up with something spin, right? Like oh Laurie's Michael's sister. Like they just always want to kind of come up with some weird shit a little bit. So the Halloween 6 is like a bastardization of the lore. But what was funny about this is that very concept of the creepy fucking uncle plays into the first real slasher movie. So from there, I go down a rabbit hole of blonde bombshells. If you're not familiar with what a blonde bombshell is, a blonde bombshell are actresses who play these very sexy, beautiful, women on screen. You know, like Pam Anderson in Baywatch is a blonde bombshell. You know, the list goes on and on. So with blonde bombshells, you have the three M's, which is Marilyn Monroe, Jane Mansfield, and Mamie Van Doren. They're the they're the prototypical blonde bombshells of cinema. You also have Diana Doris, who is the Marilyn Monroe of Britain. And Diana Doris is really fucking dope. She did a movie called Tread Softly Stranger, which honestly is one of the best film noirs I've ever seen. I've seen a decent amount. I haven't seen hundreds of film noirs. There is hundreds, damn near. But I've seen all the great ones like Detour, DOA, Double Indemnity, Maltese Falcon. Like I've seen all the very iconic ones. And this one was really fucking dope. It's a British noir. It's called Tread Softly Stranger. It's here on YouTube. And Diana Doris basically plays this chick, and she has this dude simping over her, and then his brother shows up, and then shit spirals out of control the way that it does in these noir movies when you have a femme fatale. And it was just a really dope movie, and it kind of just got me down this rabbit hole of like different blonde bombshells, and then that led me to Alfred Hitchcock's movies. If you're not familiar with Hitchcock, Hitchcock has a motif in his movies called the Hitchcock Blonde. His heroines in his movies is always a beautiful, not necessarily a blonde bombshell to some extent, but he doesn't focus so much on look how sexy she is the way they do in like Marilyn Monroe's movies or Diana Doris's movies. It's more so like they're very beautiful and articulate and intelligent and kind of have this cunning to them. But they are blonde bombshells. Sometimes you see it referred to as like the icy blonde or the blonde lead, you know, his heroines. But they call them the Hitchcock blondes. And this led me to the story of what happened with Tippi Hedren, who is Melanie Griffith's mom, who is Melanie Griffith is Dakota Johnson's mom. So it's kind of this whole, it's this whole Hollywood lineage thing, like how, Janet Leigh is another Hitchcock blonde. She was in Psycho in the shower scene. And then, Jamie Lee Curtis, her daughter, comes along and becomes Laurie Strode, who also you could say blonde bombshell, right? So there's all of these different iconic blonde bombshells in movies across cinema, across horror, especially through Hitchcock's movies. And Tippi Hedren, she starred in The Birds and then in Marnie, specifically with The Birds. So Hitchcock, he had this, I don't even know what to call it. He would fixate on his actresses who would star in his movies, and he would begin to micromanage them. He'd want to pick their clothes and pick how they act, kind of dictate how they act and how they're going to be perceived and how they're going to be marketed and kind of just control them, like these strange behaviors. And with Tippi Hedren, it became a point of obsession. And she said it happened towards the end of the filming of The Birds. And it intensified through the filming of Marnie and resulted in him actually making an unwanted sexual advance on her in the back of his limo and attacking her in the back of his limo. I say attack because it was it was sudden, unwanted advance, sexual nature that he made on her that she immediately rejected that happened. And they did a movie about this called The Girl in 2012. It was an HBO Films original, and they portray all of this. And essentially, he was kind of tormenting her, is the way they present it in the movie. But Tippi Hedren, she said that on the shooting of The Birds up until towards the end, there really wasn't too much weirdness other than the fact they're shooting a Hitchcock movie. But from him and their relationship, she said there wasn't really anything like that. But in the movie, they show that he's already obsessed with her and already tormenting her on the set. Something that happened on the movie set that's notable is the scene where she goes up into the attic and all the birds are swarming her, and she's like has the flashlight and she's like hanging by the door and they're just swarming her. So she was told that was going to be mechanical birds, fake birds. It was real birds. So they're purposely aggravating the birds, shaking them up like this, bird handlers, and chucking them at her, throwing them at her, and they're just pecking her and attacking her. The blood on her face in that scene is real blood. It's her real blood. And they shot that for 5 days, 4 or 5 days consecutive. Each day, that's all they shot. And she's just, she collapsed afterwards. She had to have a week of rest after that. Doctor said she had to have bed rest for a week straight. So yeah, it was intense. So I was watching the Hitchcock documentary, and then I jumped into I was watching, what's I watching? No, I was watching this movie that I discovered. Later, I watched the documentaries a little bit, but then I stopped the movie that I found, which is called Shadow of a Doubt, was the movie I ended up discovering, which is the first real slasher movie, and I'm about to talk about that. But I watched the first half, then I watched that movie, The Girl, and then I went back to it and finished it. And then I went deeper into the Hitchcock lore, through more of the blonde bombshell history and stuff like that. So, Shadow of a Doubt. It's one hell of a fucking movie. It's one hell of a fucking movie. I love old time movies. I love black and white movies. I love film noir. I love the classic oldies. And this is a really, really good one. This is Alfred Hitchcock, 1943. So this is long before Psycho, long before even The Birds. I don't even remember what year The Birds came out. What year was The Birds? The Birds was 1963. Oh yeah, The Birds was after Psycho. That's right. It was a follow-up after Psycho. So yeah, this is 20 years before The Birds, right? So Teresa Wright stars in Shadow of a Doubt. She's not a blonde bombshell. She actually has dark hair. And from what I read, Hitchcock enjoyed working with her. He said she's one of the most intelligent actors he ever worked with. And to what I know, I seen an interview actually, I think, with her. Yeah, I did see an interview with her, and she said she had a great time shooting the movie. So there was no issues. Or was that, maybe that was Janet Leigh. I forget. I watched a bunch of these interviews. But anyway, nothing weird or anything like that happened as far as I know. So Teresa Wright actually is the only actor in history who her first 3 movies, she was nominated for Academy Awards for each movie. And she actually won Best Supporting Actress for one of them. So this movie is basically about this all-American family in Santa Rosa, California. And they just living their normal, happy-go-lucky life. And then their wonderful uncle comes to town and shit hits the fan. This movie opens with this really, really great scene of Uncle Charlie laying in a bed in a full suit with his hands crossed like this, very Nosferatu in his coffin right away. That's immediately what I was thinking. I immediately knew this movie is going to be even darker than classic noir. I don't even know if I realized it was a Hitchcock yet. And I knew like this is going to be even like weirder than just like a gangster story or like, the typical doomed criminal story of most noir movies. I knew it was going to be a little more weird. So he eventually leaves town, basically. The intro is him He has to leave town. These two guys are looking for him. You don't know who they are, if they're cops or what they are, if they're trying to get money from him. They're chasing him down. He outruns them and he leaves town. He decides to go visit his sister, and her sister has 3 kids and a husband, and she's gonna go visit. He's gonna go visit them in Santa Rosa. He sends them a telegram. So then we're introduced to young Charlie, his niece, who's named after him. Her name is Charlie too. She's They don't show right away, but she's of course my phone is trying to die right now. Of course. Um just to be annoying, so I have to plug it in while I'm doing this. Um she's laying in bed when we see her for the first time, and she's similar, like arms crossed like this, and she's just laying there. She's bored. She's bored. There's not enough going on interesting in her average all American life. She's just bored, and she wishes something different would happen. So she gets it in her mind, I'm gonna send a telegram to Uncle Charlie. She loves Uncle Charlie. She idolizes him. She thinks he's the most wonderful man in the world, and she decides she's gonna go send him a telegram, only to discover he's already sent a telegram that he's on his way, which she thinks is telepathy. Hitchcock referencing telepathy and having a scene where she's talking about telepathy in the movie in 1943, that's so advanced. They were not talking about telepathy back then like that, like straight up ESP and shit like that. They're not talking about that shit in movies. So Uncle Charlie comes to town. Everything's groovy. The family's thrilled. His sister loves him too. The sister is just over the moon that Uncle Charlie's gonna stay with them. Um, the dad works at a bank. Uncle Charlie has big bag, 40K. He needs to put in the bank. He's flexing on the bank manager when he takes it in to go put the money in the bank. But really, the whole town is just kind of like, ooh, Uncle Charlie. He's seen as worldly. He's traveled the world. He's been places. Eventually, at one point in the movie, they want him to like do a lecture. But there is some weirdness here, because the first act of the movie, him and Charlie's relationship is it's giving Curse of Michael Myers. It's giving Curse of Michael Myers. It feels more like he's courting her than just doting on her. He gives her an emerald ring, and it just, you get these vibes that Hitchcock likes to insert into his movies, like he put in the movie Rebecca, if you're familiar with that movie. And it's a little weird, right? A little creepy uncle vibes. So what unfolds, spoilers, what unfolds is the two guys who were looking for him, they're detectives, and they come snooping around, and one of them gets to actually falling in love with Charlie, and he's the one who spills the beans, and then she starts Scooby-Doo mystery solving and solves the rest of this mystery on her own. Nancy Drew vibes. And the truth of the matter is Uncle Charlie is a straight up serial killer. He's a serial killer. He's wanted in the papers. You hear me talking like I'm in the 40s. He's wanted in the papers. And they call him the Merry Widow Murderer. So we have a straight up serial killer with a murder name in this movie, right? Already giving slasher vibes. He's killing rich widows whose husbands left them fortunes and then taking the money. Now, where people might argue it's not a slasher movie, he doesn't slash. He doesn't use a knife. He's a strangler. Back then, I've seen in some of the other old-timey movies, like being a there were stranglers and axe murderers. Those were like the two kinds of serial killers common back then that you'd see in some of these movies and stuff. Stranglers. And throughout the movie, the strength of his hands is something they emphasize. He has these strangle hands, right? You can see it in the poster. He has these strangle hands reaching. So, as she discovers, he knows, she knows, he knows, she knows. And it becomes this cat and mouse game. And then towards the end of the film, he repeatedly tries to kill her. So that's repeated attempts to murder a victim. Very slasher vibes. This is where it turns into slasher vibes. He sabotages a staircase that she falls through and could have died. Then he locks her in a garage after leaving a car on in there with the fumes all stored up in there, the exhaust fumes, and seals her in there. She almost suffocates. Then at the very end of the movie, he holds her hostage on a train when she goes on the train with her younger siblings to tell him bye. The siblings go off the train. He pulls her on and holds her there and won't let her leave. Puts his hand over her mouth and he takes her and he's gonna throw her off the train. And he has the train door open and he's waiting for it to speed up enough for him to throw her so she'll die. And then she fights him and ends up kicking him and he flies off. So if you're asking me, Charlie in this movie, she is a final girl. Teresa Wright is a freaking scream queen in this movie. She's a final girl. And Uncle Charlie is a slasher, bro. And coincidentally enough, it was the whole creepy uncle motif from Curse of Michael Myers. It was like straight up like, I don't know if they saw this movie and someone was like, hey, let's run with that shadow of a doubt lore from Hitchcock. Maybe. But this is a hell of a movie. And it's so advanced first time. This is 1943. And it basically feels like a slasher movie. It has this really cool scene where she has to run to the library before it closes and bang on the door to get the librarian to let her in. And she finds the newspaper because Uncle Charlie had ripped up the dad's newspaper so they couldn't read the story about the Merry Widow murderer. And she reads the article and they show you the whole thing and this music is playing and it's like, oh shit, he's the Merry Widow murderer. And then from then on, it's like, oh, he's a slasher, like he's a strangler. So to me, this is the first slasher movie. Like this predates Psycho by a good almost 20 years. You know, this is 17 years before Psycho. You have, you know, a character who has a murder alias name they've given him, similar like Freddy has. It's called the Springwood Slasher. You have Candyman. You know, that's his slasher name. Jason. You know, a lot of times the slashers they refer to them by their name. But you know, their name usually is attributed to some kind of a legend. Like Michael Myers, they call him the Shape or the Boogeyman. So the Merry Widow murderer, and then you have repeated attempts of him trying to kill the niece in the movie, and her ultimately coming to a final confrontation against him and winning and surviving. And she was also like innocent, you know, she was like innocent, virginal, which is the classic, you know, early final girl motif of like Jamie Lee Curtis's Laurie Strode in the early slash movies, Alice Hardy and Friday the 13th, you know, before Sidney Prescott kind of changed things up. So really, to me, it just feels like a slasher movie. It really just feels like a slasher movie. And then it was really intense too and climactic because it's coming off this deep rabbit hole of researching all of these different, you know, the blonde bombshells history and Hitchcock, and then watching Tread Softly Stranger right before this, which was also a super banger. I'm probably gonna do a movie review of that. I'm thinking about starting a new segment and doing like a noir. I'm not sure what to call it. My stupid name I have for it is just Noir Ninja Podcast or something stupid. So I'm trying to come up with a name. I don't know what I'm gonna call it, but I think I'm gonna do something with noir because I like to watch noir movies. Um, so even though I'm leaning towards horror with Total Shock Fiction, I would like to add some of that in there too because I do like those classic movies. And I'm still hosting, you know, if I'm doing a film noir recommendation. Um, yeah, so in a Shadow of a Doubt, I did an article on it called "The Shadow of a Doubt" or in the Shadow of a Doubt. I think my article, yeah, it's called "In the Shadow of a Doubt." Um, and that's on the Substack, mrshock.substack.com. Essentially, my format now is I'm doing my articles. You know, I am a doctor of gonzo journalism, right? I'm a scumbag journalist. So I write articles, I do cultural critiques and horror journalism. So I do articles, and then pretty much my thing that I'm doing is like video companion pieces. So I did the article's up. You guys can go read that. And then now here's the video where, you know, I'm giving you the rundown, giving you the episode of Shock Factory. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. You have your Fangoria article if you want to go read the magazine, you know, Fangoria style articles. And then just kind of the video essay podcast format over here on YouTube if you want to like see something visual, you know, have me talking to you. You know, doing the horror host thing, me and Ash here, you know, we're just, you know, doing horror hosting and, you know, we're doing our thing, right? We're doing our thing. What was that? Oh. Ash said Shadow of a Doubt is dope as fuck. Chris Michael Myers sucks. That's what he said. So, yeah, I just did another article too about the history of horror hosts called "The Spookiest Profession in America." You can go ahead and check that shit out. I've been doing more history, more lore on that. I just did a deep dive today on Mila Nurmi, aka Vampira. She was the first horror host ever. She was the first horror host, 1954 through 1955. Her show, The Vampire Show, was the first ever horror hosting show. And then Universal launched the Shock package after that. And the Shock package was an assembly of 52 pre 1948 Universal monster movies that had all the classics in there, from Wolfman, Dracula, Frankenstein, The Mummy, Invisible Man. Now, Creature of the Black Lagoon, I think, came out in 1956, so that wasn't out yet. But then they did a Son of Shock later that I think did have Creature from the Black Lagoon. But they basically sent that out to all the TV stations, and then they encouraged them to create horror hosts to present those movies. And then you got different Shock theaters and different horror host late night creature feature programs, broadcasts that would happen Saturday nights around the country. But regionally, you had different hosts. So how it was presented to you and how it was delivered would differ depending on what region you're in. You have John Zachary is one of the most famous Shock Theater hosts. And then, of course, you had the original Sven Gulli before you have Rick. Why am I blanking on Sven Gulli's real name? Rich Coase, yeah, before Rich Coase, who is now Sven Gulli, before he took over with Son of Sven Gulli, there was Jerry G. Bishop was Sven Gulli before him, and the original Sven Gulli had striped pants. He was a hippie with green hair, and then his show got canceled. His show was 1970 to 1973, and then Son of Sven Gulli came out in '79, and it ran till '86, and then he brought it back. And when he brought it back, he just became Sven Gulli, and now they have House of Sven Gulli with the Sven Squad. And Sven Gulli's still on the air. He's the last horror host still on the air. So yeah, you know. So I covered all that in the article. The thing about Mila Nurmi, who portrayed Vampira, is, she ended up becoming very reclusive in life and kind of living like in isolation. She kind of had like her, she lived in just, I want to say, a very isolated world. She didn't have a lot of really, she didn't have like Hollywood success. She wasn't a Hollywood success story. She didn't have all these different other opportunities for her to shoot movies and stuff like that. She was good friends with James Dean. She had a really good relationship with James Dean. She was kind of like a mom to him. He was kind of like her son. He would like hang out on her porch and like probably smoke on her porch and shit like that, which I think is really cool. She did try to sue Cassandra Peterson for the Elvira, saying it was a ripoff from her show, but because it was unique enough, they ruled that it wasn't infringement. If you change something even remotely, usually you're not going to get copyright infringement unless you literally copied it and tried to get people to think it's that property that you're representing and you're using. So unfortunately, she didn't get I mean, how it came out, she just didn't get any money from that or anything like that. And it really did seem to kind of leave a bad taste in her mouth for that. Kind of just, it didn't sit with her right. She kind of felt like, wow, look at Elvira becoming this huge sensation, and it's her motif that she started, right? She created the first, even before Morticia Addams was depicted in the show, Vampira was first. She cosplayed as Morticia Addams from the comic book before Morticia even had a name. They just called her Mrs. Addams, and she came out cosplaying. And then when they adapted the show, they didn't want to do the whole Addams family and do the whole property, so they had her create Vampira. And then they did the show later, and then you have Elvira and you have Lily Munster on the Munsters, and those are like, the sexy, spooky queens of the macabre, right? And so, I found it really sad, finding out about kind of how her life ended up, because she's so iconic to horror, and she's so iconic in the realm of horror hosting and all of that kind of stuff. So I found it really sad. It was really sad finding out about kind of how her life ended up. But her niece wrote a book about her that I want to get. She wrote her biography. She like had all of her, written notes and stuff, and took everything and wrote like a really dope biography about her life. There's another book called Vampira, which isn't a biography. It's more so just about horror host era horror, and it uses her on the front cover to kind of sell it. I'm not sure how good that one is, but I kind of want to just get both. See whatever other additional information about just horror host era monster horror. But I think that's really what we're missing the most. I have an article or a video I want to do, and basically it's going to be called "Elevated Horror is Deprivated Horror." And deprivated isn't even a word, but obviously it means deprived of. So to me, elevated horror, it lacks oxygen. To me, it's very stifling and oppressive. I feel like modern elevated horror creates this very intense feeling of dread, but not in a good way. In horror, real horror, there's this element of terror, leads you into fear, and then you're horrified, but it's kind of a fun thrill. That's why a lot of times horror will have humor in it. But even the brutal 2000s torture porn era remake horror, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Hills Have Eyes, they still have this schlocky, campy, over the top nature to them. Even if it's brutal and intense, like even with like Rob Zombie's movies, it still has this over the top, outrageous, pulpy vibe to where it's thrilling, it's exciting, it has fun to it, you know. And I think as we left out of the 2010s, moving into what ultimately became quote unquote elevated horror, since The Witch and onward, with the new modern horror movies, to me, that they're not really horror because they don't have that fun. They're very unpleasant. I don't like them. I don't watch them. And from what I've seen of them, they're just unpleasant. And I think the modern take on horror, the streamlined version that they've made mainstream, is this very just unpleasant, trauma focused, very, this is a metaphor for trauma instead of how we used to have monsters. And it's like, yeah, monsters and horror has always had social themes. It's always been a metaphor for things. Like Night Living Dead was a huge metaphor of the Vietnam War, carnage. Like it's always been a metaphor for things. The slasher eras, the confrontation between the slasher and the final girl, gender battles. Like it's always had these motifs. But these modern movies, it's like this is a metaphor for this, and that's the concept. They just focus on this trauma dumping. It's like trauma porn. And I really just don't like it. I find it oppressive. I wrote an article called Modern Horror is Oppressive, and I don't like it. Straight up, like that's, the article I wrote about it. I hate elevated horror. I think the reason they created that term was because basically what they were saying is we've taken horror out of the dungeons of schlock where it was lowbrow and equivalent to porn, and we've elevated it and we've made it streamlined and we've made it mainstream, and they give you PG-13 jump scares with these very unpleasant worlds that are not fun to experience. And then people say Evil Dead Burn is too extreme. And the reason why that movie got so much pushback is Evil Dead Burn is made in the energy of classic horror. It's brutal, it's intense, it's relentless, but it's fun. And it knows it's fun. And it knows it's outrageous. And it's bringing back classic monsters. The Deadites are the closest we really see to real monsters. And when they do monsters now, they don't do them right. Like Nosferatu, I don't know what the fuck that was. I didn't even watch it. I seen small glimpses of it. It was terrible. It was atrocious. Like it was atrocious. It was basically them doing monster smut porn for a movie. Which that's not horror. That's something else. There's always been that sexual metaphor where the wolfman is stealing the beautiful woman or whatever. But as far as what they were doing with that new Nosferatu movie, I don't like that. Like that shit's creepy. That shit's weird. I didn't like it. I didn't fuck with it. It sucked. And that's the thing. This elevated horror, it sucks. It's not cool. It's not fun. It's boring. It sucks. It's bland. It's streamlined. So with that being said, I hope you're shocked. Are you shocked yet? And if not, you'll be shocked next time on the Shock Factory. Stay shocked.